The first raindrop fell on the dusty window of Myra's little bookshop just as she was closing for the evening. It wasn't unusual for rain to visit the town of Wellingford, but this rain felt different, gentler somehow, as if it carried a message rather than a storm. The sky, a muted blend of charcoal and silver, hummed with the promise of change. Myra paused with her hand on the door latch, watching the droplets chase each other down the glass, and felt something tug inside her chest, a quiet whisper encouraging her to stay a little longer. The bell above the shop door jingled, startling her out of her thoughts. A boy, soaked to the bone and shivering, stepped inside. He couldn't have been more than 12. His hair clung to his forehead, and his shoes squished with each small, hesitant step he took. He carried no umbrella, no jacket, just a worn backpack hanging off one shoulder. "Sorry," he said in a shaky voice. "I just needed somewhere dry for a minute." Myra offered him a warm smile that reflected the softness she always seemed to carry in her eyes. "You don't have to apologize. Come in. Sit by the heater for a bit." The boy nodded but didn't move right away. His eyes darted around the shop, not in the curious way children usually explored her cozy aisles, but in the cautious way of someone who was used to trouble trailing behind him. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Eli." "Well, Eli, I'm Myra. You're welcome to wait out the rain here." Relief softened his shoulders. He walked toward the small heater near the front desk and crouched beside it, extending his hands toward the warm air. Myra watched him for a moment before slipping into the back room and returning with a clean towel. "Here," she said, handing it to him. "Thank you," he murmured, gripping it tightly, as though he wasn't used to kindness arriving in simple forms. The storm outside intensified, rattling the old windows. The sky darkened quickly, and Myra realized it would be dangerous to send Eli back into the streets at this hour. Yet, she also sensed something deeper, an unspoken story behind his weary eyes. "Do your parents know where you are?" she asked carefully. Eli hesitated before answering. "It's just me and my mom. She's working late. Sometimes I stay at school until she finishes, but they closed early today because the building had some issue with the electricity. I didn't want to bother her at work, so I thought I'd just walk home." "In this weather?" Myra frowned. He lowered his head. "I didn't think it would rain this hard." A gust of wind screamed outside, and she made her decision. "Why don't you stay here until the rain calms down? I can make you something warm to drink." Eli glanced up, surprised by the offer, but nodded gratefully. "That would be nice." In a few minutes, Myra returned with 2 mugs of hot chocolate, the steam curling into the cozy air of the bookshop. Eli wrapped his hands around the mug and took a slow sip, closing his eyes as warmth spread through him. Myra considered how something so small, warmth, shelter, kindness, could become a lifeline for someone. They talked for a while. Not much, just simple conversation. Myra learned that Eli loved stories but rarely had books of his own. He often visited the town library, where he spent hours reading until the librarian gently told him it was time to leave. His mother worked 2 jobs, and though she tried her best, life was heavy for them both. There was a tenderness in the way he spoke about her, a fierce loyalty that made Myra's heart soften further. As the rain continued its relentless tapping, the shop seemed to grow cozier, wrapping them in a comforting silence broken only by occasional pages turning. At one point, Eli picked up an old novel from a nearby shelf and sat cross-legged on the floor, absorbed completely. Myra watched him with quiet affection. There was something sacred about the way he read, as though stories were more than words, they were escape, hope, magic. Hours passed, and the storm showed no sign of stopping. When Myra checked the time, she realized it was later than she expected. "Eli," she said softly, "it's getting dark. Does your mother get worried if you're late?" Eli tensed. "Sometimes. But she knows I don't cause trouble. She gets tired. And she doesn't have a phone anymore. It broke last week." Myra's chest tightened. She could see in the boy's eyes that he wasn't avoiding home, he was avoiding adding more weight to his mother's already heavy shoulders. "Why don't we walk to your place together?" she suggested. "I can make sure you get home safely." "You don't have to do that," he quickly replied. "I know I don't," she said gently. "But I want to." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Myra locked up the shop, grabbed her large umbrella, and together they stepped out into the rain. The downpour had softened, the droplets falling like shimmering beads, dancing off rooftops and sidewalks. They walked side by side through puddles that reflected the glow of street lamps, the umbrella covering them both. "Your bookshop is nice," Eli said quietly after a while. "Thank you. It's been my dream since I was about your age." "You wanted to be around stories?" "Always. Stories saved me when I was young." Eli stared up at her, curiosity brightening his tired eyes. "Saved you how?" Mira hesitated, something old stirring in her. "I grew up feeling alone too. Books became my friends. They showed me worlds where hope existed, where kindness mattered, where people cared for one another even when life felt dark." Eli smiled faintly. "I like those stories." "I know," she said gently. "I can tell." By the time they reached Eli's apartment building, a small, weather-beaten complex at the edge of town, the rain had thinned into a soft drizzle. Dim light glowed in one of the windows on the third floor. "That's our place," Eli said. Mira walked him to the entrance. "Do you want me to come up and tell your mom where you were?" He shook his head. "She'll be okay. And she'll be happy I wasn't outside alone." Mira nodded. "All right. But before you go," she opened her bag and pulled out the novel he'd been reading earlier. She held it out to him. His eyes widened. "Wait, you're giving it to me?" "Yes. Consider it a gift. But I can't pay for it." "You already did," she said with a smile. "By reminding me why I opened my bookshop in the first place." Eli clutched the book to his chest, overwhelmed. "Thank you. You're always welcome at my shop. Anytime." He gave her a shy, heartfelt smile, waved, and slipped inside the building. Mira stood there a moment longer, watching the light in his window flicker to life. She felt something inside her shift, a soft renewal, like the warm glow of a candle rekindled. Over the next days, something beautiful began to happen. Eli returned, not because he needed shelter, but because he had found a place where kindness lived. He came after school, sometimes doing homework at a small table Mira set up for him, sometimes reading quietly for hours. Mira realized she looked forward to his visits. They talked about books, about hopes, about life struggles. Slowly, Eli came out of his shell, laughing more, relaxing more, trusting more. And then one day, Eli's mother came to the shop. Mira recognized her immediately. Exhaustion carved deep lines beneath her eyes, but beneath that was a warm soul who carried love like a hidden treasure. She approached the counter timidly. "Are you Mira?" she asked. "Yes." "You must be Eli's mom." She nodded, lips trembling slightly. "I just wanted to thank you." "Eli, he's been happier lately." Lighter. "He told me everything you did for him that night with the rain." "I don't know how to repay you." Mira shook her head gently. "You don't need to repay me. He's a wonderful boy. I'm happy he feels safe here." Eli's mother blinked away tears. "You're the first person in a long time who's shown him kindness without wanting something in return." Mira reached out and squeezed her hand. "Kindness isn't a transaction. It's a gift. And your son gives just as much of it as he receives." Eli's mother covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "If there's ever anything I can do..." "Just keep being the mother he loves so fiercely," Mira said. "That's more than enough." Over the following weeks, the bond between the three of them strengthened. Sometimes Eli's mother would help Mira organize books after work. Sometimes Mira would save pastries for Eli. Sometimes they simply sat together, sharing quiet companionship. The rain that had brought Eli into Mira's bookshop became something of a symbol, of unexpected connection, of hope carried on storm clouds, of kindness falling softly into lives that needed it most. Months later, on the anniversary of the rainy night they first met, Eli gave Mira a gift. It was a small painting he had made in art class, a picture of her bookshop, warm and glowing in the rain, with two small figures standing under a large umbrella. Mira felt her eyes sting. "Eli, this is beautiful." "It's because that night changed everything," he said earnestly. I think the rain carried kindness to both of us." She hugged him tightly. "Yes. I think it did." And from that moment on, whenever the rain fell in Wellingford, Mira no longer heard it as a lonely sound against her windows. She heard it as a reminder, a soft, steady whisper that kindness travels in many forms, sometimes hidden in storms, sometimes disguised as small gestures, but always arriving exactly when hearts need it most.